Hello, welcome back to our YouTube channel today. I'm thrilled to take you on a comedy, fantasy, romance movie from 2009 called The Invention of Lying. Spoilers ahead, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. In a typical town where people have cars, jobs, houses, and families, no one has ever learned the ability to tell a lie. Everyone tells the truth, which can be harsh at times, especially for the chubby and loser Mark Billison, who just walks out of the elevator and down the hall as he looks for something. Mark eventually knocks on a door, and a beautiful woman named Anna opens it, surprised to see him early. He introduces himself awkwardly, while Anna only expresses her indifference and disappointment, mostly about his looks. Anna leads Mark inside her apartment as she still needs to continue preparing. While waiting in the living room, Mark expresses awkwardness about being early and his worry that the restaurant where they will dine might not be expensive enough for Anna, but it's all he can afford. In his 40s, the poor guy still doesn't have financial assets, and he might even get fired that week. Moments later, Anna goes down, and they decide to leave. At the restaurant, the two sit at their table and order some drinks, and Mark shows interest in knowing Anna. Anna then shares, closely bragging about being an executive, earning a lot of money, being beautiful and being successful. Although she appears to be happy, there are times when she lies in bed, eating and crying. But the conversation gets interrupted as the waiter arrives with their drinks and asks for their orders. In the middle of their date, Anna's mother calls to check on them. Then, Anna describes Mark to her mother, saying he is unattractive, doesn't make much money, is chubby, and has a little snub nose. She even assures her that she won't be sleeping with Mark and probably not even kiss him. The uneventful dinner ends. Then they walk back to Anna's place. Mark thanks Anna for agreeing to the date as a favor to Greg, his friend. He finally accepts that she is out of his league and that he will most likely never see her again. However, a tipsy Anna admits she enjoyed the date and promises to clarify her true feelings for Mark once she's sober. Before they part, she gives Mark a kiss on the cheek, which makes him very happy. Back at his place, Mark falls asleep while watching an Honest Coca-Cola commercial. The next day, Mark runs into his neighbor, Frank, on the elevator. Both chubby and losers, they express their misfortunes and dissatisfaction with their lives. Before they part ways, Mark tells Frank the usual "see you tomorrow" greeting, but Frank honestly answers that it would only be possible if he's still alive, given that he plans on killing himself. As Mark walks to work, he sees a homeless man, a strange preacher, an arguing couple, and a woman who suddenly talks to him. In the lecture films building, Mark's colleague is giving some visitors a small tour of the place when Mark walks in and gets introduced as one of the company's least successful screenwriters who might get fired that day. Before entering his office, Mark approaches Shelley, a secretary who dislikes him. She then informs Mark that Anthony, their boss, is going to fire him later, and it seems like everyone knows about it too. While seated in his office, Mark sees Anthony pacing back and forth, and he hesitantly enters the room after Mark calls him. Like what everyone has been talking about, Anthony finally fires Mark because of his poor scripts about the Black Plague. Doubling the pain and embarrassment, Mark gets a rejection email from Anna that his workmates have also received. Finally, for the third blow, Brad Kessler, the company's esteemed screenwriter, approaches Mark, supposedly to bid him farewell, but instead resorts to insulting and mocking him. Mark then goes to a nursing home to see his mother, Martha Billison. As he walks down the hall, he is greeted by three elderly people who are also talking about strange things. After entering his mother's room, he helps her switch the television to a proper channel. Then he shares his setbacks in life. The next morning, Mark gets up to a pounding on his door, only to meet his landlord, who demands to have his $800 rent. But with only $300 left in Mark's bank account, the landlord evicts him from his apartment. Afterward, he goes to a bank to withdraw all his money and close his account. Unfortunately, the system is down, so the bank teller can't perform a bank closure, but she grants the withdrawal. The bank teller asks for his remaining balance, as she is unable to check his account. At this moment, Mark invents the first lie in the universe as he claims to have $800 left. However, after his deception, the system is restored, and the bank teller sees $300 in his account, not $800. But given that everyone in that place doesn't know how to lie, The bank teller thinks it is the system's mistake and easily hands Mark the $800. Mark is in a daze as he leaves the bank and talks to his landlord to pay his rent. When he returns to his apartment, he squeals in delight and relief at how easy lying is. Later, he meets with Greg in a bar and admits to saying something that wasn't true. To make Greg understand, Mark calls Jim, the bartender, and demonstrates how lying works. But after a few attempts, they end up believing everything he says. With the power of his newfound ability, Mark solicits ideas from the two men on what he must do if he can make things work the way he wants them. Greg and Jim suggest going for a girl, so Mark follows the suggestion. However, despite successfully bringing a beautiful woman to the motel, Mark refuses to carry out his initial plan and leaves the woman alone in the room. Mark returns to the bar disappointed. Then the men start to brainstorm again. Suddenly, he thinks of getting money, so Mark and his drunk friend go for a drive until he notices a police officer tailing them. The officer doesn't hesitate to arrest Greg for drinking and driving and drags him out of the car, but they are instantly freed when Mark lies again, saying that Greg is not intoxicated. Successful in escaping the arrest, Mark takes over the wheel and drives to a casino where they play some games. After playing, cheating, and telling a couple of lies, Mark walks out with Greg, bringing buckets of money. The next morning, Mark runs into Frank again by the elevator. He learns that Frank has been researching ways to end his life and intends to try it that night. Mark then lies for a good cause, convincing Frank not to end his life by saying that everything will be fine. Before they exchange goodbyes, Mark even promises to see Frank later that night. Mark extends the same kindness to the people he sees along his usual route to work. He gives money to the homeless man, talks to the woman standing outside the lecture films building, fixes the fight of a quarreling couple, comforts the elderly in the nursing home, and fulfills his promise to hang out with Frank. When Mark goes to his room that night, he calls Anna and tries to ask her out on another date. He promises it will be different this time, and Anna, fortunately, agrees to see him the next day. After the call, he watches a show produced by Lecture Films. Forming a brilliant idea, he gets up from bed and starts to write his own script. He is so motivated that the next morning, he walks confidently into the Lecture Films building and enters Anthony's office. Despite Anthony's protests, he begins pitching his new Black Plague script, and after reading a few sentences, Anthony picks up the phone, summoning everyone to his office to listen to Mark's story. Once Mark finishes reading the entire script, everyone is pleased, and he wins his job back in the company. Mark and Anna's second date finally takes place in a fine restaurant. Anna congratulates him on his script and becomes interested in his personal life. Mark shares that he is unfortunate to have an alcoholic father who was sent to prison for burglary, but he is blessed with a great mother. He also tells Anna that he will pick up his mother from the nursing home and make her spend the rest of her days in luxury. With Mark's success and wealth, he hopes to finally be with Anna romantically. But despite finding Mark's personality as husband material, Anna holds back because of his genes. A phone call interrupts their conversation, and Mark rushes to the hospital to see his mother. Unfortunately, the news of his mother's failing health immediately greets Mark, and the doctor informs him of Martha's major heart attack and the possibility of a fatal heart attack later that night. Mark grows concerned as his mother begins to cry and talks about her fear of dying. So, in his mother's final moments, Mark consoles her with a lie, telling her that she will be happy for eternity after death. He's unaware that the doctor and nurses are also listening to him, urging him to tell them more. With his mother's death, Mark leaves the room devastated and walks past Anna, who's waiting for him in the hallway. Anna follows him, and they drive back to her place, where they sit in silence. Anna holds his hand as he mourns, and they wake up next to each other on the couch the next day. That morning, Mark drives home and is surprised to see a large crowd gathered in front of his apartment building. As he moves through the crowd, nurses from the hospital point at him, and everyone begins to ask questions about what happens after people die. When he gets to his apartment, he receives a phone call from Anna, who asks about the news report that states he knows what will happen after people die. Moments later, Anna finds her way to Mark's apartment. She asks Mark what happened, and he explains that to relieve his mother's fear of dying, he told her that there's eternal joy after death. Anna is also pleased to hear what Mark just said and convinces him to write down what he knows. After a while, Greg arrives with pizza to be with his friend, and everyone across the globe waits for Mark to disclose what will happen to people after they die. When morning arrives, Mark finishes writing down everything he knows. Thinking of something fancy to put the papers on, he uses the pizza boxes that Greg brought over the previous night. Soon he faces everyone and delivers the news they've all been waiting for. Mark reveals that there is a man in the sky who controls everything. Then, when people die, they do not disappear into nothingness but go into a great place. He also adds that everyone will get a mansion in that place, and all the people they love will be there. At the same time, there will be free ice cream of various flavors for everyone, available day and night. Lastly, Mark says if people do 3 bad things, they will instead go to a terrible place when they die. People start asking what the bad things are, and after 2 hours of discussion, Mark clarifies that the bad things involve intentional and physical harm to others. Then, the next revelation states that the man in the sky decides who goes to the great place and who doesn't, as well as who lives and dies. So, the people complain that the man in the sky is evil for doing bad things to them, but Mark counters that the man in the sky also lets good stuff happen. This leads to the last revelation, stating that even if the man in the sky does bad stuff to people, he makes up for it by giving them an eternity of good stuff after they die. Of course, that will only happen if they don't do any of the mentioned bad stuff. Then, a girl from the crowd concludes that it's some kind of a test. To also answer everyone's curiosity about how he knows these things, Mark reveals to the people that the man in the sky told him everything. In the following days, the headlines and front covers of various newspapers, magazines, tabloids, and research publications center on Mark's revelation. Because of this, Mark's career takes off. He also becomes popular, buys his own mansion, spends a lot of time with Anna, and his Black Plague screenplay becomes a hit. One day, Mark and Anna are sitting on a park bench when he asks Anna what she thinks of the people in the park. She starts calling them losers, sweaty, nerds, and says other negative comments about their physical looks. So, Mark persuades her to look at people past their appearance. Anna then asks Mark to tell her what he thinks of her, and he compliments her good looks. But beyond that, he sees her as a sweet, caring, and wonderful woman. When Anna's turn comes, she begins with the chubby and snub nose remark, but she also showers him with positive compliments. Anna says Mark is smart, kind, fun, and most importantly, he makes her happy. Carried away by the moment, they slowly close the gap between their faces, but Anna holds back again, thinking about Mark's poor genetics. The next day, in her car, Anna hears some radio commentators mock Mark for being a fat loser who hears things from a man in the sky. Concurrently, Mark is in his house, instructing his assistant to write down his next script. Anna comes to Mark's house as the assistant leaves, giving Mark a birthday card and telling him she can't watch a movie with him because she has a date with Brad Kessler. Their conversation quickly leads to Anna sleeping with Brad, and with Mark's strong opposition, he makes up a rule that a woman cannot sleep with someone unless they are married. Brad soon arrives at Mark's house to pick up Anna and quickly leaves for their date. In the restaurant, Anna notices how narcissistic and controlling Brad is, and he even decides to order for Anna. In the middle of their date, Anna's mother calls again to check on them. Brad asks if he can talk to her instead, but Brad only ends up offending her mother, which hurts Anna. For the rest of their dinner, Brad only talks about how they are a strong genetic match for each other and casually insults Mark. The next morning, Mark takes his usual route to work and notices nothing has changed. To make things worse, people now only care about getting their mansions when they die. Also, some still disrespect the famous Mark Billison. While at her mother's house, Anna watches Mark's interview on television. Anna soon realizes she loves Mark and somehow wishes to be with him, but her mother strongly opposes this and dials Brad's number, forcing Anna to speak to him. Meanwhile, Mark visits his mother's grave and expresses all his sadness to her. Seasons have changed, and Mark and Anna have never spoken to each other. But one day, Anna goes to Mark's house to hand him an invitation to her wedding that will happen the next day. Mark begs Anna not to marry Brad, but Anna states she only has little time to find her ideal genetic partner. After their emotional confrontation, Anna goes to the park and sits on a bench when she notices some kids making fun of a chubby boy. Anna intervenes, then proceeds to console the young boy. The next day, Mark decides to get up from bed, and he gets a glimpse of his awful self in the bathroom mirror. When he returns to his bedroom, he sees Greg already dressed for the wedding. He also sees a tuxedo prepared on his bed, and Greg hands him a razor to finally fix himself. Later on, the two arrive at the church to attend Anna's wedding. Soon, Anna walks down the aisle while Brad waits for her at the altar. The ceremony proceeds immediately, and when the wedding overseer asks if there are any other people who believe they offer a better genetic matchup to Anna or Brad, the room falls silent until Mark speaks. Despite the criticisms of others and Brad's mockery, Mark stands in the middle of these people, confessing his love to Anna and challenging the concept of marrying someone with great genetics. This time, Mark wants Anna to decide for herself and go for what she wants, but instead the people start asking him what the man in the sky wants for Anna. Not wanting to lie again, Mark defeatedly walks out of the church. Anna goes after him, asking what the man in the sky wants. Mark then admits that there is no man in the sky. He only made it up to console his dying mother, but things escalated. Even though Anna is still puzzled about how Mark can make things up, it doesn't matter because she is now certain that she wants little fat kids with snub noses. Finally, free of inhibitions, the two smile widely at each other. Years later, a pregnant Anna serves a meal to her husband and son, who are already seated at the dining table. The two compliment her cooking despite how the food tastes and looks, making Anna happy. When Anna goes to the kitchen to get the bread, Mark and his son share a meaningful high five. It seems like the young boy has inherited his skill of lying. Then, they eat and live happily ever after. Did you like our movie recap? Subscribe and comment if you like our video. See you next time!